Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we look at 10 of my favorite bottled and bond whiskeys that we have here in the Whiskey Cove. Run that video. All right then, folks, thank you for joining us for another new, exciting and humbling episode of the Whiskey Cove. Hopefully everybody's continuing enjoying the start to the new year. Things have been pretty good here down in the Whiskey Cove. Thank you to everybody who subscribes, comments, or just likes any of the videos. We always appreciate it here. So, on today's video, we talk about 10 of my favorite bottled and bond whiskies that I have here at the Whiskey Cove. I have a decent amount, probably somewhere in the region close to 20. However, I picked out 10 that I specifically really like, and we'll talk a little bit about each one. Maybe how much I would pay for them if I was buying them from a store, a little bit there as well, and just kind of like the flavor profile, and if you should go out and find them, definitely. So let's just delve straight into things here, and this should be a bit of a no-brainer here. That is Early Times Bottled and Bond. There's been a little bit of a change in the last few years with Early Times since being bought by Sazerac. So Barton will be distilling it, from my knowledge now. Obviously it was bought from Brown-Forman. I'm surprised that Brown-Forman let it go actually, because it was the same mash bill that they were using. It's the same mash bill that they use for the Early Times Bottled and Bond. That's what they use for the King of Kentucky. Exactly the same mash bill. So King of Kentucky might just basically be very highly aged cask strength version of this, which is probably what made it so good. I don't really get much difference, if I'm honest, between the old Barton or the Barton stuff and the Brown-Forman. That's probably because Barton hasn't started introducing their own distillate into it yet, because you have to think, it is a bottled and bond whiskey, so aged at least 4 years by one distiller over one distilling season. And it hasn't been 4 years yet since they bought them out, so they may be just using the barrels that they had from them. However, so far it's just a phenomenal whiskey. I get like strawberry shortbread with it as well. You get like a spicy tobacco finish, a beautiful flurry of different vanillas throughout them. Very approachable for me. I love this whiskey. It does so well in a lot of the blinds that I do. MSRP for a 1 litre bottle is like $22, $23. I still manage every now and again to find the Black Cap Brown-Forman bottles, and I always pick them up as long as they're reasonably priced. I think the most I paid for one is about $28. So if you do see one, I would definitely suggest picking one up, the Black Cap ones, just because they're not going to be around anymore, and it's quite a unique bottle just to still have and kind of share with people and just let them know exactly what's different about it. However, for the price, it's just a no-brainer. It's a solid whiskey. I don't particularly like to mix this because I think it's a better whiskey on its own. I don't think it mixes too well, maybe because it takes away some of those vanilla and strawberry notes and floral notes that I really like from this whiskey. However, it does still have kind of like that brown sugar element to it there as well. If you are still someone who's been living under a rock and has not bought this bottle, if you find it, you definitely have to pick this up. What a great bottle it is, Early Times Bottled and Bond. Next up, we're going to take a trip down to Jim Beam in Clermont, Kentucky. That's because we're going to talk a little bit about Old Grandad Bottled and Bond here. So I really like Old Grandad, the 80 proof whiskey. The nose on that, when I first noticed that we did the review on those three together, wow, I was so impressed with it. And then the Old Grandad 114, it kind of a lot more hot and spicy, like a red hot tamale type thing. Those red hot sweets tamales. Isn't tamale just like the Mexican tamales? Anyway, I'm talking rubbish. But yes, like the red hot sweets, very spicy. So what this bonded does, it kind of combines the both worlds and bring them together. And what you're left with is like a slightly spicy, stone fruit forward bourbon whiskey. And it noses so well. You do get like a lot of oak in there as well. A lot of that like dusty rick house oak note that you get normally from a little more aged whiskey. It's phenomenal. It's really, I'm super impressed with this bottle of whiskey. Much like the Early Times, this is 100 proof, 50% ABV because it is bottled and bond. I thought this was the 1 litre one. I'm not sure. I thought I had a 1 litre one here. Maybe it's the 80 proof one that I had. But you can get these in 1 litres. I think I paid about $19 for this size. I think the 1 litres are only like $21. So very similarly priced to Early Times Bottled and Bond, but very different in its approach. You get more woody notes with this, more stone fruit, and a little bit more spice than that. I can nose this for days. Beautiful candy note there as well, phenomenal. So if you're someone who's on a budget but still wants to drink really great whiskey, so far we are off to a great start. Like 22 bucks, 21 bucks, and you are not gonna be sorry that you spent that money on this. Old Grandad bonded. And then sticking with some budget whiskey, let's get this one because it's another obvious one on this list out of the way. And that is Early Times Bottled & Bond White Label. So out of Evan Williams, which is owned by Heaven Hill Distillery. They also have a smaller distillery on Whiskey Row in Louisville, Kentucky. However, they don't really produce much of this stuff there. This is all normally produced over in Bardstown in the main distillery there. Why I love this whiskey so much? First off, it is cheap as anything. A 750 milliliter bottle will run you like $13, $12, something like that. And these bigger 1.75s are just even better value for money. I think maybe even like 20, 21 bucks. I can't remember the exact amount, but I'm always shocked at just how cheap this whiskey is. As you can see, we've already put a good dent in this bottle. I've always got a 1.75 liter Evan Williams on deck here in the Whiskey Cove, just because it's just a solid mixer. You know, I could put this in a, I don't particularly want to use it for old fashions because old fashions is that the core ingredient of an old fashioned is obviously the whiskey, and I think that old fashioned, like good bourbon, does well in an old fashioned. But if you're thinking of like a whiskey sour, like a bourbon smash, something like that, then I think that this is just phenomenal for that. People wouldn't recognize the difference between something like this, an Eagle Rare 10 or a Weller, because when it gets mixed in something like a whiskey sour, you just need it to have a good whiskey presence, and this does that as well. A proper bourbon whiskey. A lot of candied notes that I get in this, a lot of like white sugar, cane sugar type notes. Not as much wood, but then you do get the kind of the 100% or 100 proof 50% ABV that kind of marries into that, which will also what makes it a good cocktail mix there as well. So Evan Williams Bottled & Bond was bottle number 3. So now we can have the budget hitters out of the way, and like I said, if you want to combine all those three, they're probably only going to set you back about $50, maybe like $50, $55 for 3 awesome bottles of whiskey. However, let's go on to maybe some of the more expensive and harder to find things here, and let's start with E.H. Taylor Small Batch. So it's going to set you back about $45 for the most part for this bottle of whiskey, and a lot more available. I remember going back about 8-9 years ago, walking into a King Soopers and just seeing like a row of these on the shelf. And back in the time when I was only buying like one bottle of whiskey at a time, I think I bought one for like $25, $30, which is pure insanity if you think about where bourbon is right now. It's just quintessential classic Buffalo Trace, isn't it? You know, you get that beautiful vanilla punch, Buffalo Trace vanilla punch. You get that really nice, well-balanced oaky note. Not much spice there as well. I think E.H. Taylor might be their low rye mash bill, which is mash bill 1. Beautiful cherry notes there as well, and like an old style, like a cherry cola, like hard candy or something like that. Wonderful, beautiful tasting whiskey, if you can find it, because this is just an allocated whiskey now. You'll be lucky to find it for $40 to $50. However, I would pay a little bit more for this if you compare this with a lot of the trash whiskey that is on the market for overpriced amount. I would say I pay up to maybe like $70, maybe $80 if you haven't tried this before. That can fluctuate. I think we've talked about this before, so how I feel today might feel different a couple of weeks from now. But that's kind of $70 mark. I think is pretty fair for E.H. Taylor Small Batch. Next up, and let's get really fancy here, and that is going to be Old Fitzgerald 9-year. I haven't opened this bottle for a while, so I really don't want to tear the cork, but let's go. Come on, let's do it. Perfect. It always really surprises me how the corks don't snap off on these, because they're just glued straight on. It's not like they sit inside the glass, but they haven't broke on me, touch wood, so far. So I really wasn't a big fan of this bottle of whiskey when I first got it. I did this blind. We used to do a series called like Poor Blind Guesses, where my wife would pour me a glass of whiskey. I wouldn't know what it was, and this came up, and it didn't really nose, or it wasn't really that great. But over time, it's really opened up really well. It's the best kind of part of Heaven Hill, if you like that really nice aged oak presence that you get from a lot of Heaven Hill products. Even at 9 years old, bottled in bond, of course. This one is the spring of 2020. I haven't drunk this that much. I don't know why. I probably should drink this a little bit more, but it just looks so fancy on the shelf, so I kind of just leave it. And there's other whiskey that I get through. Darker barrel char notes there as well, more like deeper brown sugar burnt notes. and it's kind of just evolved and changed over time, and that's kind of been like a lot of my relationship with Heaven Hill products, especially the more aged stuff, is that like I'll pick them up, I'll try them first time, and they just don't really sit that well with me, and then I'll just leave them on a shelf because I'm just not looking forward to trying it, and then I'll go back to it and I'll get better, and then I'll go back to it again and I'll get even better, and so it does, they age really well over time. Obviously this one is a highly allocated bottle. I won this in I think it was like St. Patrick's Day lottery in 2020. I probably need, like I said, probably need to kill it, but it looks pretty cool, and we've done a few things with them. We probably will in the future, like maybe a bottle of one blind year, which is probably going to be a part 2 to this video. So that was Old Fitzgerald, age 9 years. Next up, we are going to Brown-Forman, and that is the Old Forester 117 series, the bottled in bond. So this was released in July of 2023. We were fortunate that we were actually in Kentucky when this was being released. We picked up 2 bottles of this. We have another one tucked away, and if you watched the Whiskeys of the Year in the Whiskey Cove, you would have known this bottle of whiskey was on there. It's just so good. It is phenomenal. Yes, the Whiskey Row series has a lot of bottled in bond whiskey on there, but this is just so much more syrup forward. It's like you're sitting in a restaurant at IHOP, and you haven't ordered the pancakes because you like to order eggs and steak or whatever, but the person next to you has ordered pancakes and they just drizzling syrup everywhere, and you get that kind of waft of pancakes and syrup. That's kind of what this is in the glass there. And maybe the idiot who's eating those pancakes picks up the cherry or blueberry flavor as well and pours that over, and you get that berry note. That's kind of in this as well too. It's a phenomenal whiskey. It really is. I can't say enough good things about that. The only bad thing I can say about that is just the availability. These 1-1 series never really come back. It's kind of like a one and done. My understanding from speaking to the folks down in Old Forester, that these Old Forester bottled in bonds were just like the cherry or the honey barrels that they might have used for other bottled in bonds products, but they were just so good. They had to just made their own release. I think I paid about $150 for a full-size bottle because these are pint-sized bottles, but that's roughly around where the math sits with them. So I was very happy to be able to get these in a phenomenal whiskey. If you ever get the opportunity, maybe to pick one of these up from maybe like a local group or some social circle, you should definitely pick them up. Don't overpay for it, but if you see it at a bar, definitely buy that as well. Next up, and we are going to California because we are going to Redwood Empire. This is their Rocket Top, is it? No, this is the Grizzly Beast. Sorry, Rocket Top is another one. Grizzly Beast, straight bourbon whiskey, bottled in bond, distilled grain to glass in Sonoma County, California. So as you can see, this isn't open, but we had another one before. This is from, they do a couple of different ones every year. This is summer 2021, which is really unique actually because I bought it this year. So I don't know why this came out 2 years after it was bottled. Interesting. Maybe it's just the store. But I picked up, I think, the 2021 and the 2022. The 2022 was phenomenal. I'm not sure how the 2021 drinks, but we'll just say this represents the one I got from 2022. It's actually, this distillate is actually quite similar to a lot of the stuff that Blue Note used to put out. So Blue Note used to do, it was like a 9 and 10 year release that they had. They had like a 9-year bottle and a 10-year bottle. So even though this is a bottled in bond, it drinks a little bit more aged than that. And the Blue Note releases that they used to put out was sourced from Kentucky. Obviously, this is California whiskey, which is another pretty unique part of this bottle. The only downside I would say about this bottle is that it has gone up to $80. When it first came out, it was around about 60. It's gone up to 80, and I don't think it's worth $80 now. As you can see, with a lot of whiskey that we already have really great value for money. I think this is a little bit too pricey for that. I think it's priced me out a little bit, but nevertheless, it still is a phenomenal whiskey that drinks much more aged than it is. Really great wood notes there, and I know they also like plant a bunch of trees for people buying the whiskey as well, so you have a pretty good cause there as well. This has become a lot more findable here in Colorado. Argonauts Wine and Liquor at Dave Co. I know that they have that available on the shelves, so you can go in and buy them at any time there as well. So that was bottled in bond straight bourbon whiskey. And just looking at the back here, this is aged 5 years. So bottled in bond is at least 4. This is 5, so you get the extra 1 year there as well. Moving on and kind of back to Buffalo Trace here, and that is E.H. Taylor single barrel. So this is a pretty special bottle, as we already know here at the Whiskey Cove. This isn't a single barrel pick. We've had them before here. Single barrel picks, for me personally, I don't think that it's just another single barrel. You know, this is already a single barrel product. A single barrel pick is just something that a liquor store felt matches their profile. They thought was pretty unique and special to them. However, I find that the consistency between just the regular single barrels is pretty good and pretty solid. I think this is a really great whiskey, much better obviously than the small batch. Haven't tried the barrel proof version of this, but I'm sure it's phenomenal. But for a bottled in bond whiskey, it just kind of is like an E.H. Taylor small batch, but just so much more fruit forward. Obviously it's the same proof and same ABV, but you just get so much more of a rounded whiskey. The E.H. Taylor small batch is not unrounded, I guess, and it's not rough in any ways, but this is just one step above that. As that goes, like aged Eagle Rest 17 BTAC type vibes to this bottle of whiskey. Very, very cherry forward Italian cream, Disaronno, Amaretto type notes there as well, which I do get from a lot of Buffalo Trace products. MSRP on this is only like $55. Obviously, finding it for that is another thing. So good luck, I guess, with that. We were able to pick one up, I think, over just before Thanksgiving, Black Friday, for that price, which we were super humbled and thankful for. But we also did stand outside in the cold for like 4 or 5 hours. So, you know, I guess you gotta hustle a little bit there. How much money would I pay for this? I think $100. I think you could pay for this. I think after $100, you get into a different realm there as well. But even going into close to like $150, $200, this is still so much better than a lot of the rest of the stuff that you see out there. I'm not going to name names, but I know you folks know it's probably that bottle of whiskey that you overpaid for that's kind of sitting on your shelf and you just wish that you didn't have to look at it anymore. Even though you need to be reasonable with where whiskey pricing is, this can compete at pretty much a pretty high level. However, let's be reasonable, $100 I would say for this single barrel. 2 left, and then we have 1792 bottled in bond, and specifically we really like the picks from 1792 bottled in bond. Unlike the single barrel from E.H. Taylor, that is already a single barrel, so a single barrel pick isn't so special. However, with these bottled in bonds, they are more small batch, and when it comes to the single barrel picks, then you are getting, I feel like, better value, because I feel like 1792 or Barton aren't gonna just push out single barrel bottled in bond picks that are rubbish, because they would just blend them into the small batch. So you're gonna get a more of an elite taste in bottled in bond, and that definitely goes for this as well. I do get a lot of bacon cherry from Barton, and they also have a really nice woody note there as well. And after doing the tour at Barton and going into the rick houses, and the person who did the tour for me kind of opened the cork on the barrel, and I was able to stick my head in and nose a cast strength version. It's that note just sticks with me every time I smell a lot of the Barton stuff. So I think that's maybe why it's almost like a romance that I have to it. But that nostalgic note kind of brings me back to that moment where it was a phenomenal time and a great day. That dusty, cherry, sweet note. Phenomenal whiskey. I paid $50 for this. I think that's worth that every day of the week. The bottled in bond, even without the single barrel picks, is pretty top tier as it is for the price. However, the single barrel picks are just oh so special. So if you're able to find one, you definitely need to be picking that up. So that was a bottled in bond by 1792. And then lastly, and we've saved the best to last, I guess, in a way, and that is Old Fitzgerald, aged 19 years old. So we were fortunate enough that we were able to win this in a lottery at the beginning of 2023 from Argonauts Wine and Liquor. They sometimes do a monthly liquor draw where you can put a ticket in and they'll have a bottle of the month that you can win. And for the month that they pulled my name, they had this Old Fitzgerald 19. And it's funny that again, the cork I'm always get, much like the 9-year, this was exactly the same. The first time I opened it up, I tried it, I was like, this is kind of just a little bit average. Wasn't really a big fan. I was like, oh, Elijah Craig 18 is probably a better bottle, but man, every time I come back to these Heaven Hill products, they just get so much better. I probably need to have a pour of this today as well. It's been a little while here. This is the bottled in bond fall of 2022 release. So much wood presence there as well. And I know there's a little bit of concern with a higher aged bourbon that it could be over oaked. I really like an oaky note in whiskey. I'm probably against the grain a little bit. than a lot of other YouTubers or bourbon tasters out there that don't particularly like higher aged bourbon whiskey, but I really like the higher aged bourbon whiskey. I really like the strong oak presence, that oak spicy note there as well. I don't think there's really been a whiskey that I've had that I could say it's too over oaked for me, just because how much I like the oak note in whiskey. This also has like a darker, deeper cherry note. Think of like the maraschino cherry notes with the syrup there as well, that sweet syrup. The barrel char, the oak note runs through the whole thing. Very well balanced. Can't say enough good things about this whiskey. Obviously highly allocated. I think I paid I don't remember how much I paid for this. I think it was $230 I paid for this, but again, you're getting a 19-year-old bourbon. So it's not just like they get a whole barrel of whiskey on age 19 years and they get to pull the whole barrel into bottles. They're probably only left with like 1/3 of the distillate left in there. So you are probably getting, if you think about it, only 1/3 of the yield from the barrel. So when they mark stuff up to about $230 for a 19-year-old bourbon, you can probably justify paying that, because if they wanted to, they could kind of pull that barrel 7 years earlier and like they'd have double the amount of distillate left and charge half the price. But again, a very unique aged bottle of bourbon that they've been paying tax on every whiskey season. A very great bottle of whiskey. If you can find it, I don't know, I wouldn't like to put a price on it, maybe $300 I guess. I don't know what these go for on some markets or crazy marked up shops, but I think if you pay more than $300 for it, even though this is a superior whiskey than the Elijah Craig 18, I still think that the Elijah Craig 18 is great on its own, so I would just stick to paying like $180 for that instead of $300 for this. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. We got through a lot of bottled and bond bourbons here. We range from budget hitters to some really great mid-tier stuff to some really special whiskey at the end. And these are probably my favorite bottled and bonds that I have here, bottled and bond bourbons that I have here in the Whiskey Cove. If there's anything I haven't included on this list, I'd love to hear some recommendations down below, like specifically recommendations of great bottled and bond bourbons that you can find pretty easily, because I'm kind of on the lookout right now of expanding kind of my palate into maybe craft bottled and bond whiskeys, but not just any old craft bottled and bond whiskey. I want to hear the best craft bottled and bond whiskeys that's out there, so I can pick up a bottle or two of that. So hit the comments for that, and as we say on this challenge, we drink through the world's whiskeys one glass at a time. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Thanks. Cheers. Bye.